11:47 p.m. You are sitting in a chair you have sat in for 14 years. The screens in front of you show 17 aircraft, 17 green dots moving through the darkness above your zone. Each dot is a flight number. Each flight number is a cockpit. Each cockpit is a crew. Each aircraft is full of people doing what people do on night flights: sleeping, reading, looking out at the darkness below. Not one of them knows your name. Every single one of them is depending on you. The update was scheduled for 11:47. You knew it was coming. 4 minutes of downtime, system maintenance, standard procedure. You had checked the active flight list before your supervisor left for his break. 17 aircraft, all cruising altitude, all stable, all with at least 40 minutes of airspace before any of them needed guidance for approach. 4 minutes was fine. 4 minutes was nothing. The screens went dark at 11:47 exactly. You watched the clock. 11:48, 11:49, 11:50, 11:51. At 11:52, you picked up the direct line to the Technical Operations Center. No answer. At 11:53, you tried the emergency line. Voicemail. At 11:54, the first pilot called in. His call sign was Delta 742. His voice was calm, professional, the specific calm of someone trained not to panic in the dark. He said he had lost contact with ground control and was requesting a status update. You told him you had a system outage and you were working to restore contact. You said maintain current heading and altitude. You said you would be back with him shortly. You said shortly. You had no idea how long shortly was going to be. You tried the Technical Operations Center again. Voicemail. You tried your supervisor's mobile. Rang out. You looked at the dark screens. You thought about 17 green dots that were no longer green, that were no longer dots, that are now just aircraft moving through darkness you could no longer see. You have a pencil. You have a notepad. You have the last position data from before the screens went dark. You have 14 years of knowing exactly how fast each class of aircraft moves and in which direction. And you have a radio. That is everything you have. You pick up the pencil. You draw a rough map of your zone on the notepad. You mark 17 positions from the last data you had. You write the time beside each one. 11:47. And then you start calculating where each of them is now. Not approximately, exactly, because approximately is not good enough when you cannot see them. The next 47 minutes are the longest of your life. You work the radio constantly, every aircraft in your zone, one by one. Delta 742, cruising at 35,000 feet on a heading of 270, maintain. They maintain. Sierra Foxtrot 91, descending for approach to the regional airport. Hold at current altitude. They hold. You work through all 17. You keep the notepad updated. Every 2 minutes you recalculate every position. Every 2 minutes you talk to every aircraft that needs talking to. You do not tell them how dark the room is. You do not tell them the Technical Operations Center has still not answered. You do not tell them you have no idea when the screens are coming back. You tell them maintain current heading. You tell them you have them on radar. You do not have them on radar. You have a pencil and a notepad in 14 years and a radio. At 12:09 a.m., the first real problem arrives. Sierra Foxtrot 91 has been holding at altitude for 22 minutes. They are running low on fuel margin. They need to begin their approach. You have no radar. You have no instrument landing system data. You have the last known position of the aircraft and the layout of an airport stored in 14 years of memory. You talk them down, heading by heading, altitude by altitude. You tell the pilot exactly where they are relative to the runway, based on nothing they can verify and everything you know. The wheels touch at 12:17 a.m. The pilot keys the radio. They say, "Thank you." You write, Sierra Foxtrot 9-1, landed. You cross it off. 16 left. At 12:23 a.m., the student pilot calls in. Call sign November Whiskey 33. The voice is young, too young for this night. They say they are on their first solo night flight and they have lost all instrument contact and they need help. You look at your notepad. You find November Whiskey 33. Small regional aircraft, single engine, student pilot, solo certification flight. You know exactly where they are. You know exactly what they need. And you know that getting them down is going to require them to trust your voice completely. With no instruments to verify, no radar to guide them, just your voice and their training, and the airport beacon running on its own independent power. You take a breath, you key the radio, and you start talking. You talk November Whiskey 33 down for 19 minutes. Every heading adjustment, every altitude change, every moment where the voice on the other end wavers slightly, and you bring it back with the specific calm that 14 years builds in a person who chooses this work. You do not tell them the screens are dark. You do not tell them you are working from a pencil and a notepad. You tell them they are doing perfectly. You tell them the runway is ahead. You tell them exactly how far. You tell them exactly when to start their final descent. You tell them they are going to be fine. At 12:41 a.m., November Whiskey 33 touches down. The student pilot keys the radio. They do not say anything for a moment. Then they say, "I can see the runway lights." You say, "I know. You did well." You write November Whiskey 33 landed. You cross it off. 2 left. At 12:33 a.m., the 16th aircraft declared an emergency. Mechanical issue. Unrelated to the blackout. Just the night deciding it had more to offer. They diverted to a military airfield outside your zone. Another controller picked them up. You never heard what happened. You still do not know. 1 left. Delta 742 has been with you the whole night. First to call in. Patient. Professional. Following every instruction without question. At 12:44 a.m., you bring them in for approach. Heading by heading. Altitude by altitude. Your voice the only instrument working tonight. At 12:34 a.m., the wheels of Delta 742 touch the runway. The pilot keys the radio. He says, "Smooth landing, ground. Good night." He has no idea. You write Delta 742, landed. You look at the notepad. 17 positions, 17 names, 17 lines crossed off. At 12:34 a.m., in 4 seconds, the screens come back on. All of them, simultaneously. The room fills with green light. You look at the screens. You look at where November Whiskey 33 was when the system went dark. You look at the airspace around them. You look at what was there. You look at the margins. You sit in your chair for a long time. You do not move. You just look at the screens, at the shape of what the last 47 minutes actually contained, at how many things had to go exactly right, at how many of them did. At 12:36 a.m., your supervisor walks back in. He is carrying 2 coffees. He puts one on the desk beside you. He looks at the screens. He says, "Quiet night." You look at the notepad on the desk beside you. 17 positions, 17 names, 17 lines, all crossed off. You pick up the coffee. You say, "Yes, quiet night."